Yeah, right? Yeah, really. So fortunately, my daddy did good by holding on. My mother too, because her family land is still in the family. Uh, Ole Miss fame.
That looks great.
Is that fine?
I don't know who did it, but they knew what to do.
Okay.
That's perfect.
Okay, that's fine. All right. Okay.
You so busy you didn't even notice what it's.
Welcome to Delta Renaissance. I'm your host, Sade Turnipseed, and I am so pleased to have on the show with me today a true legend of Ole Miss fame. And I tell you, this man has truly gone down in history as one who has broken and made sure that the country broke through on the color barrier, and you all know him as Mr. James Meredith. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank
It is
you.
indeed an honor to have you here.
Thank you.
I mean, it's just been so much that, of course, anybody who went to school in the United States or who has any sense of American history will know the name James Meredith. And so, what I would like to do right now, because I understand you're one of them hillbillies like my folk up there from central Mississippi, up in Kosciuszko area. I wanted to allow folks who are watching to really get a sense of the man and where you're from and you know, before you got to Ole Miss. Just talk to us about being born in Kosciuszko, Mississippi.
Well, Attala County, Mississippi is the center of the universe, and I'm not unproud of the Ole Miss fame, if that's what you call it, but that's at higher education. And I hope before I die, we are able to make public education in Mississippi the best in the world, and that the name James Meredith will be more associated with providing educational opportunity at the lower level, so that our young people will be able to enjoy whatever now exists at the higher level.
That proper training, that from early childhood on, is that what you're
From birth.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about that.
Yeah. What was your early childhood training, though?
That is very, very good. Because most of my life, I thought what old James Meredith did was because he was so smart. And as an old man, I discovered it didn't have nothing to do with me. It had to do with what my parents and their friends and neighbors and church members did
That
before
village.
I was born.
That village, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tell us about it.
Well, basically, I would like to set the framework because I'm not really talking about 80 years ago, not even 50 years ago. I'm talking about today. We have failed our young people.
Big time.
When I graduated from high school 62 years ago, every black in the state of Mississippi that got a high school diploma could go to some good college somewhere in America. Today, less than 1 out of 10 can go to any college anywhere in America, including all of the black colleges in Mississippi, because they don't make a high enough college entrance score. And some people might not be too upset about that. But my God's very unhappy with me because I haven't done more about that problem. So I guess I could talk a little bit more about what happened to me. My parents, my father, primarily was the principal person, started a school long before I was born. It was the first school in Attala County. And
it was just for colored kids. That's what they go back then, colored kids.
I mean, only, well, I guess that's a legitimate question. But we need to get away from the race thing.
Sure.
My mission from God now is to get the people of the black race to do for themselves all that they can do to improve their lives. And this is what my parents and what you mentioned Oprah Winfrey a few minutes ago, what her parents did before we were born, even before I was born.
Because you and Oprah are related.
Right. And grew up in the same church. Born less than a mile apart. But what happened was they built this one-room school. One room, 8 grades, one teacher. The teacher taught from each grade, and then the students would teach what they'd learned to the other students.
Oh, okay.
And at 3 years old, I started going to that class, that school. And by the time I was old enough to go to regular school, I knew everything that had been taught in that school.
What was the name of that school? Do you remember?
Marble Rock. The church was Buffalo, United Methodist Church. And So as a result of that, every opportunity I got from there on, I was able to take advantage of because I could read and write and count. And that's what we have to start doing as a people now.
I agree. We're going to take a quick break and come back and continue on this journey and this exploration of the life of James Meredith. I love the story so far. You stay tuned. We'll be right back. Okay, so we're going to come back. Does my sexiness offend you? Okay, I will speak louder. Welcome back. I am in the story in the studio. You got me stumbling, Mr. Meredith. I'm just in honor of my guest today, and he was just describing the situation in which he grew up in, and of course it was educational based, and again his legacy is just that. Let's talk more about that education that you got, that brought you through so much of what we know in this American history.
I hear you, but I would rather talk about what we can do now, which is the same thing that we are not doing now.
Because your life is an example of what to do and how to do it. If it
But
was
for
so
most
successful.
people, that example is at a grown man dealing with grown and near-grown people. Our problem now is what any human being can do in life depends upon the foundation laid between birth and age 5.
I agree.
And we are totally, actually it's not we, the black church is totally neglecting and failing to do its job. There should be no such thing as a child in the street, a child anywhere that's not being cared for. And that's why I'm calling on all black churches to take responsibility for every child within 2 miles of every church. That is exactly what you understand. If there's anything blacks know, it's the Bible. And if there's anything they really know, it's the New Testament. And Jesus Christ came and taught the world how to make God's will on earth as it is in heaven. The number one thing that he taught, you have to build a proper foundation. And he wasn't talking about a building. He was talking about the foundation of the people. And we have the capacity as a people, as black people, to train up. The Bible says you should train up a child in the way he should go. And when he's old, he will not depart from it. We have the knowledge and the capacity to do that. And literally, we're not doing it.
Yeah. You get no argument from me.
Well,
Absolutely
I'm really
not.
trying to use your program to reach the people in the Mississippi Delta and the Arkansas and Louisiana Delta and get this across. I promised God if I kept living, I was going to spend all the rest of my life on this mission. And that is to get the proper foundation laid between birth and age 5.
Yeah. So tell us the method that you're using. I understand you've written a book. And what's outlined in that book? Or is that the method that you're using to...
Well, right. Actually, what Jesus Christ did was brought the message But then before he died, he established his church. And the mission of his church was to do exactly what he did, and that was take care of the poor, the masses, the poor people who he said what was sheep, like sheep without a shepherd. And there's not, in the state of Mississippi, there's not more than 1,000 blacks anywhere in Mississippi that don't live within walking distance of a church. And that church should be responsible for every individual, and particularly for the young, and know and keep records. God ordered Moses to keep a record of every person for the whole 40 years they were in the desert. Almost no black can get a recommendation from anybody. Don't nobody know him well enough. It used to be the minister in any community could give a recommendation for anybody. If he didn't know him, he knew people who knew him.
Is this because you're saying they're not going to church, or how is it that they don't know?
It's got nothing to do with church. It's got to do with the mission of Christ. And that mission is to save the people. And that's what a church is supposed to do. Yeah. And not save their soul, salvation. They're supposed to train up a child in the way he should go. And we're not doing that.
And so it's the church's fault.
Well, I just say that every church should take responsibility for every child born within 2 miles of that church. As a starting point, every church should find every child under 5 and under, and start a record of them, and from there on, for every child born. That's what the mission, the Catholic mission particularly, for the first 300 years in America, that's what they did. I mean, they, and the black race has the capacity to solve all of our problems. I mean, so all we have to do is what God taught us to do, and we all know that. And most of us know we don't do it.
So what are your recommendations in terms of the method? Now, we're going to take a break in about 30 seconds, but I do want to put that on the table. Now, I know, like I said before, you've written a book. Is it, what's the name of your book that you?
A Mission from God.
A Mission from God. In that book, and unfortunately I have not gotten a copy of it, but I will. And I want to explore that.
I got them in the back of my car.
And I want them. And I want one. We got to have one on the next, when we come back from break, I want to show that book that you have written so the folks at home too can make sure and read it. But we want to take a moment or two to really get into what your recommendations are, and if we can just bullet point them and just go through them and just hit on it. Just what are the hot topics that you really, besides the church and their personal responsibility and the family.
I got something else I'm going to give you when I go to my car.
Okay, all right. So we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to talk even more deeply with Mr. James Meredith.
Ooh, I'm sorry. A lot of things happen when you get old.
Wait a minute.
The only thing I was thinking about was that book.
Wait, did he come before the screen? Before it was?
It was fading out.
Can you back it up a little bit, Sade, and get that out of there?
He's
Okay.
an expert. I can tell.
Hold on. Here, put this in your pocket. Oh, your wife's going to go get it. Okay, so you can stay here. She's going to go get it.
Know about the.
Okay.
I got one in my pocket. I'm gonna give you.
Okay.
Yeah. Always carry an emergency copy.
Uh-oh. Yeah, you doing what you want to do.
Both sides.
He doing what he want to do. Like, hey, you ask whatever question you want, I'm going to answer what I want to answer. That's what you do.
Most people I don't tell, I just do it.
You a mess. That's what you are. Okay. All right. I need my glasses. Oh, I got to plug you back in.
I'm sorry.
Hold up. Pull that out your pocket, baby. I got that in here. Okay.
Just dropping it on the floor.
Uh-huh. So we need your book. I want that book.
She said you need to project more again, and especially when you turn away from the mic.
Should I put the mic on this side? Is it on the wrong side?
She said you need to be right there.
Okay. I'll just talk. I'll talk louder.
It's when you look at the camera, that's when it drops off.
Right, right. Because I turned right. Okay. Oh. That's your Wi-Fi. Hey, how you doing? Good, good. Meet Mr. James Meredith. Yeah.
All right.
Oh, really?
Teach broadcast at Jackson State.
Do you? That was my degree. I got my degree in communication broadcast, radio, television. Look at you. How come you was 2 shades darker then? What happened?
I was bad. I ain't bad as I was then. I was bad. And you talking about them girls going crazy? Shoot.
Okay.
I mean, they went stone crazy. You can see why a little bit, can't you?
Okay. Quiet on the set. Welcome back. I am in the studio and I am holding in my hand the book that we referenced a moment ago, A Mission from God, a Memoir and Challenge for America by James Meredith with William Dole, who's your co-writer, I assume. Look, this is so important. I can tell already just from having just flipped through it. And I also have the handout that you have already bullet pointed for my suggestion earlier that we do. And this is God's message for truth, that you have pretty much outlined what you believe, you know, should be the approach taken. And it is God's message that we need to emulate, basically. We need to, you know, you
And
spoke
it took
on.
me 50 years to write that.
Really? Wow. And so is this book reflecting and explaining the process that one would go through? Is this a reflection of the book itself, or?
Actually, the purpose of the book was an introduction to this.
Okay. So, if you don't mind,
But everything here is in the book.
what you're saying here, God's message for our time, if you don't mind, there are 5 key points.
Right.
Did you want to, I can read it and have you explain it, or?
Sure.
All right. Number 1, only the family of God can solve the problems of our time. What do you mean by that?
Education is a process. The most important part is the kingdom of God. And literally we have taken God out of our education process. And if there's anybody in the world that shouldn't be doing that, it's black people in America. So only the family of God.
Why, if it's anybody in the world, black people, what makes our story so peculiar to this?
Well, frankly, Mississippi is the center of the universe, definitely the center of the black-white universe. All major policy worldwide, including all of Africa, is made for the last 200 years. It's been made right here in Mississippi. And the future will come out of Mississippi. If Mississippi solve our basic education problem, education is a bad word. The Bible says you should train up a child in the way he should go. The vast majority of blacks who get in trouble in the system, in the criminal justice system, do not know right from wrong, good from bad, and how to apply it to life because we don't teach them. And we all know, nobody in the world know better than Mississippi blacks. And that's all blacks. The people like to talk about the church than the unchurched. All blacks in Mississippi have Christian values. None that don't. Don't matter whether they go to church. They still have these same values. And even if they're not in church, the people in church have a responsibility, according to my understanding of Jesus Christ's teaching, to make sure that they know and understand. And that's what we have to do. And basically, I stay away from trying to tell people how to do what they have to do. When God finally pulled my coat, he said, James, Meredith, you talk too much and don't do enough work. And he said, furthermore, I'm a fair God. I gave all of my people everywhere wisdom. And all you have to do is make people understand that they know what to do. All they got to do is do it. So right now, some of you all have so smart, and in many cases, most blacks don't even like to admit that they are here because they were a cheap workforce. I mean, the truth is the light. I mean, and the most significant thing that's happened since blacks been in Mississippi was they became Christians.
That was the most significant
Absolutely the most significant.
That happened to black people.
The blacks, since they came here as a black workforce, is that from actually around just before the Civil War, until just before the Civil War, the people who used black cheap labor would not allow them to become converted to Christianity. They thought if they became Christians, they wouldn't continue to do the work. But they made a decision in the 1830s to Christianize, evangelize the black workforce. Because they did that, we now know better than anybody else in the world God's will and Jesus Christ's teaching. But we probably do it less than anybody. All we have to do now is do God's will, follow Jesus' teaching. And my God tells me